podcast S'mores. I am so excited that I have the guest that I have today. Um, we have Mary Fusillo, who is my good friend, and she's a past colleague, and she's the new business owner of Beyond the Nest. And welcome, Mary, to Podcast S'mores. It's good to
Hey,
see
thanks
you.
for having me all the way from Mexico.
Yeah, you're at one of your first retreats right now, which I want to get into. And we've known each other. I just want to tell our viewers, when did you start with, so we were in the fertility business together for years, but when did you start with Freedom Fertility Pharmacy when I was working there? Because I was like the first salesperson they hired, and then they hired nurses, which were you like 2003 maybe?
I was at the beginning of 2004. It was Gina and I were the two Freedom nurses.
Okay.
And then they had that big merger, and then they had all the other nurses, but Gina and I were the original Freedom nurses in 2000, beginning of 2004.
All right. And so we bonded through many experiences of, I don't know, I feel like we were either like treated so amazing, like thrown into like this luxurious lifestyle and this work, working environment. And then we were also like sort of abused or terrified children. It was sort of this interesting combo, which made us all bond so much. But we had a lot of fun, and then we just kept in touch, and you started your own business, but I'll get into that in a little bit. I don't know, is there anything else we want to talk about with our past?
I always, it was the only job I've ever had, and I've been working for 46, 47 years, where I had a special colleague whispered in my ear, hey, if you don't want to drink, order a glass of sparkling water, have them put a lime in it, but tell them you want it in a cocktail glass.
Right.
Because we had a boss that really encouraged us to imbibe alcohol. And you were like, wait, I can't, I'm working, right? And so that's what I did for years. It was like, oh, I'm having my vodka tonic, which was really just sparkling water or, Perrier with a lime in it in a cocktail glass. So that always think of that. It makes me laugh, right? So
yeah, and I didn't do that and got my black belt in drinking, and you know where that led. Like I don't drink anymore. So but it was, we had so many good times there. And I want to share with you, Mary, your bio is amazing. Like the amount of education, I'm going to read this because I don't want to miss anything. But so Mary Fusillo is a native of Houston. Wait, did you grow up there?
I grew up in Houston. Yes.
All right, so here we go. Native of Houston, Texas, where you earned your undergraduate degree in journalism from the University of Texas at Austin, a nursing degree at UCLA Medical Center School of Nursing, followed by a Bachelor of Science in Nursing, as well as a master's degree in public health. And most recently, you're getting your PhD in biomedical ethics. That's insane. Like that's a lot of education. I'm amazed, but let me finish. There's more, guys. After a productive career in the medical field, Mary became passionate about fertility and helping others in business that focused on both the medical, emotional, and financial aspects of fertility. In 2007, after being with Freedom Fertility Pharmacy, Mary started the Donor Solution. It's all about donor eggs and helping people find donor matches and all that stuff. And then after that, as your business grew, you branched out to start Three Sisters Surrogacy in 2012, and then later Family Solutions International. In the fall of 2018, after Mary's children went to college, you took a sabbatical and you went to Montevideo. Did I pronounce that correctly? Montevideo, Uruguay. And it was there where you found a new perspective on life and how you wanted to live life differently. Did I cover your bio? Did I get it all? Is there more?
I think that's about it. But I do want to say that the fascinating thing about my educational history is I graduated number 80 out of 82 in high school.
That's interesting. Mm-hmm. So, because I was not a good student in high school and before that. And then in college, I just figured it out. Is that what happened? And then you
Well, I was at I went to a very high level, very rigorous high school where most of my classmates had been there since kindergarten. So one of the interesting aspects that I learned about myself as I went through my journey of life is I thought for years and years that I was not real smart because I didn't do well in high school, but I did well in subjects where no one had been exposed to it. So I would make an A in US history because no one had had this level of US history. But if you were in a math class, I wouldn't do so well because I hadn't had all that years of prep for it. But
Right.
when you're 16, 17 years old, it's all mixed up in your brain. And so you just think you're dumb. So when I found out I wasn't, it's like one of the most, for me, the high point of my academic career just happened. I took a bioethics class. I have 4 more classes, and then I have my dissertation to finish my PhD. But I was in this class, and it was a class that had 3 PhDs in philosophy that were working towards a PhD in bioethics. So, I mean, I talk about feeling intimidated, right? And they would write these things. I was like, oh, what are they talking about? So at the end of the class, they put a grid up. Now, back in my day, they didn't do this, but now they put a grid. I made the only A in the class, and the professor wrote me a little note saying, thank you for putting those PhDs in their place all semester.
Oh my
And it
God.
was like, oh my gosh, because everything I wrote, I felt like it was a second grade level compared to these PhDs. But anyway, I digress. So that was like the high point of my academic career. And I will say, I have now made all A's in my PhD program.
Eagle
Hey!
has landed.
Yeah.
Dr.
So,
Fusillo. Soon I'm going to be calling you Dr. Fusillo or Dr. Yeah.
and then my husband has a PhD. So now we're going to be doctor and doctor.
That's intimidating, Mary. I'm a little intimidated.
I love it though. It's the only
That's
educational
so
thing
exciting.
I love it. It's so fascinating. But anyway,
And that's a huge thing that, we don't have to go off on a tangent, but I have
right.
that, like, that whole, like, I'm not as smart as everyone thing too. And now, like, in my life, like, I love learning so much. It's crazy how that happens. But yeah, so congrats on almost graduating. And yeah, so I want to know how you came up. You went to Uruguay, you came back, you had kind of an epiphany, but was that when you came up with the idea of Beyond the Nest, your new business?
Well, I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. So I
Yeah.
was actually, in this, I guess it was the spring of 2018. I was on a business trip to Chicago, and I like snow, but not at the Chicago level of snow. Okay. And oh, it was so cold. It was like 15 degrees and snowing, and I didn't have the right equipment for it. Right. So anyway, I'm flying back, and I had grabbed a magazine out of the gym at the hotel because I was like, I just need to like decompress. So I'm reading this magazine, and it has this story about digital nomads. Well, being at my age, I was like, what's a digital nomad? So I went and I read this article about 6 different digital nomad companies. And I went, oh my gosh, this sounds fascinating. I love this. And it
Can
was
you
like,
tell everyone what that means? Because I am just getting more familiar with it.
it's somebody who can take their job on the road. I think the traditional meaning is what people think of is that you're sitting on the beach in Bali with your laptop and you set your mouse down and you go off and go surfing for 2 hours. Okay. Yeah, that's the movie version. The
FYI, you can't even see your screen on the beach, but whatever.
whatever, right? You don't care because you're on Bali. But the real story is it's a lot of techie people, and now with everyone working from home, you can kind of do it. And it doesn't mean that you spend your whole life traveling from place to place. Sometimes you may want to say, hey, I want to go spend 3 weeks in San Miguel where I am and just kind of enjoy it. I'm going to work every day, but I'm going to have this different flavor of my life. And so it breaks up the routine.
Yeah.
So I'm reading these articles and I went, oh my gosh, I've got to do this because you don't have to do it for a year. You could do it for 2, 4, 5, 6, 8 weeks. So I applied to this company that will remain unnamed. And I, right there on the airplane, pulled out my laptop, hooked up to the internet on Southwest Airlines, and like filled out the application.
Like,
And
just like,
like,
do it.
I'm doing it, right? I thought, well, I'll talk to my husband about this later, right? So I a couple days later, I got an email saying, "Hey, we here's a personality inventory to fill out, and then we'll set up a Zoom call." So I did all that. I had this Zoom call. The guy was sitting in a, I guess a co-working space, coffee house.
Yeah.
And it was funny because here's me, looking nice, a little middle-aged lady. And this guy had like big dreadlocks and, he was like, hey man, you know, I
Right.
thought, oh, I wonder if he's just been smoking some pot before he
Right.
talked to me. And so he talked to me and I thought it went well. And like 2 days later, I get this email saying, thank you, Mary, for applying, but unfortunately you do not fit the, kind of the vibe of our group. Have you ever thought about elder hostel?
Oh my, oh my God.
Oh, big
No.
tears. Then I was mad. I was like, no,
Yeah.
no, 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 no. So I applied to another one called Hacker Paradise, which that loved me, brought me there. And then I picked Montevideo only because it fit into the time frame that I could do it with my job and with my kids and my husband. So I ended up in Montevideo because of the time. I could have been in Argentina or Chile or Bogota. Anyway, so I'm loving it. I'm having a great time. I lived in this 2-bedroom apartment with this woman from Vienna, and we're still friends. And I think she's actually going to come to our Greece trip.
Ooh.
And I'm walking home one day because I lived about a half a mile from the co-working space, and all of a sudden I'm sitting at the stoplight, and I kind of like had this like vision, I guess. I was like, I have enough. I have enough. I don't, and it didn't mean monetary, it didn't mean educational, it didn't mean things. It just meant I am filled. I don't have to be constantly out there clawing my way through the business world, through the personal world, through whatever world. And I
Right.
can't explain it. It was just like this feeling. And it was honestly, it was a life-changing moment. So that was 2.5 years ago. And in the intervening time, I thought I want to be able to help other people do this. So I went on another trip to Belgrade in 2019 and I met Vanessa, my partner, who was actually a country facilitator. And we started talking about this idea, and here we are now, two and a
And
half years later.
like a whole different generation. So it's sort of a nice mix of the two of your different generations view, but also different skill set and the way you look at things, maybe.
Yes, and that has been a big challenge, and a challenge for me and a challenge for her. And I
Right.
think that the deal about it is when you're partners, it's like if we have a disagreement or even an out and out fight, I keep telling her because I've been married for 26 years. I say this is just a fight. It's not a divorce.
Right.
If you filed for divorce every time you had a fight in your marriage, there'd be no marriages, right? I would have been married for about 4 hours and then we would have gotten divorced. And she's like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. And it's true. I mean, it's okay. And holding the resentment in, I think, is actually worse than just sitting it out because we do have two different visions of the company, but they're both can congeal together. And so that's been like the most eye-opening thing for me. It's also helped me understand my own children who are 23
Right.
because I'm like, what are they doing? And it's made me kind of understand the generational differences.
That's great. So yeah, so you two had a meeting of the minds when you met and you just decided to come up with this. I love the name Beyond the Nest. It's a great name for various reasons. And then, but I do want to have you just tell people, so creating Beyond the Nest, it's for two, I'm just going to say what I think, and then
Okay.
you can sort of correct or add, but it's for not only digital nomads, but it's also for maybe the empty nesters or anyone who's at a place in their life who are looking to learn more about themselves, recalibrate, reboot, through travel, through adventure, and through this community that comes together when they're together at your retreats. But you can please tell me more, tell us more.
Well, when Vanessa and I first met in Belgrade, Serbia, I mean, it's like everybody has Belgrade, Serbia on their bucket list, right? I'm sure. And it's actually very fascinating, but I digress. Anyway, my original idea was that I wanted to have this I wanted to not have a company. I just wanted to be able to go on some of these adventures and tell people like their next one might have been in Hungary. I wanted to come for a couple of weeks and talk about my
Write
experience
about
and
it.
how life changing it was. And then she started going, well, they're not interested in that because they're really marketing towards the 20s and 30s something, an occasional 40s and 50s and 60s person. Let's recalibrate that and look at where people are. And I started listening to my, mom friends who were kind of lost about what do I do now that my kids are gone. And a lot of my friends were more mature mothers. They didn't have kids at 22. They had them at 32 or
Yeah.
33 or 35. And so hence now they've had both a career on this end and now they're looking for a career on that end, or they're trying to find direction besides playing golf. So we ended up having, so then COVID interrupted us.
Yeah.
Vanessa got stuck in South Africa for 4 months
Oh my
because
God.
she had gone there before COVID on the next trip to do the scouting for the next trip for the company she worked for. But unfortunately, they had to cancel the trip, but then she couldn't get out because they weren't letting anybody come back to the United States. So she spent 4 months in South Africa in lockdown.
Wow.
And yeah, and so when she finally came back, we started we met in October in the flesh, and then we met in February, and we launched in February, and we're in the middle of our second week of our second retreat. So they're 1 week long, and our next set we are in Greece.
Okay. So you're in the second week of your trip, your first trip, you're launching in San Miguel, Mexico. Tell me about the trip so far.
Okay, so the first week was called Flying the Coop.
Right.
Okay, Beyond the Nest, Flying the Coop. And Beyond the Nest can mean flying, I think that people who have children who are leaving home call it, oh, they're leaving the nest. But also, we've all been locked down during
Yeah.
COVID. So the
Leave
people
your
that are
house
on the,
too.
yeah, it's like, well, I got to get out of here, right?
Get the hell out of here.
I want to, and you're like tired of your only trips are to like the grocery store and Target. You're like, I got to do something else, right? So that's kind of the name. So the first week was called Flying the Coop, and we have 4 weeks of pre-mentorship where every week the attendees we have a Slack channel and they can chat with each other. So they get introduced before the trip, and then they can join us on a Zoom call. It's 1 day a week. We also record it, so if they want to watch it later, just kind of they talk through these exercises. We built a book that we gave every participant like exercises to go through during the 4 week mentorship. So when they actually arrived in San Miguel, they actually kind of knew each other, kind of like when you're Facebook friends with people. All of a sudden, they were Slack channel friends.
Right.
And so every day we had morning yoga, meditation, a light breakfast. Then they had usually the workshops were from like 10:30 to 12. About 1 o'clock, we would have a chef prepared lunch. And then we would have the afternoon adventure. It was at the hot springs. We had a tour of this historic church. We went to a great cocktail party with some people from San Miguel. We went jewelry shopping. Today, like the group is horseback riding in a canyon. But it's interesting, like last night, there was 9 of us at dinner. And so 9 people at dinner is difficult because you can't talk to everybody. But but the funny thing is, people were talking about the workshop that morning and how that impacted us. So I think that the whole retreat ends up being all day long. You're just not sitting in a classroom with your glass of water and your pen and pencil and your PowerPoint presentation. You're taking it on the road.
Yeah, well, and also when you're getting to know people and bonding with people, I think you learn so much about yourself and
I
seeing people
did.
in
Yeah.
a totally
Yeah.
different place.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually last week, one of the questions I was asking, I think on the third day was like part of my workshop was about all these women were either retired and are about to retire, and they were various ages, 50s, and one woman was 82, and I was like, I hope I'm like that at 82 because she was
Wow.
amazing. Yeah, she was amazing, and so we went, kind of talk about around the circle, and I asked them, what does the word retirement mean to you?
Mhm.
And the first woman goes, oh, it means freedom and liberation and this, that, and the other. And she'd been an OR nurse for years. And so she was like, I'm ready to not get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and get to work. And I'm loving it. And then the next one is like, well, I'm not retiring for another, 8 or 9 months. And, it's just going to mean more time with my family, blah, blah, blah. But then one woman goes, it's been horrible. And retirement means that I'm like put out to pasture. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's how I feel. And so then it was just this huge bonding moment that everyone thinks that like it's a life of leisure. And she goes, I'm paranoid that I'm not going to have enough money. And so it was a very bonding experience. So then all the other women jumped in. It happened to be all women. This week it's not all women, but it happened to be all women. And it was wonderful how they kind of embraced her and metaphorically and was like, hey, that's why you're here. And when she left on Saturday, she goes, I can't believe it, but I actually have a plan of what I want my retirement to be. And
Oh,
I was like, oh, it's a big win.
a breakthrough. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that is scary for people to be like, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Like people finish, they're done with like whatever they've been doing since they were 22 and out of college, and then they have time to do other things, but like, how do you fill that time, and have you filled your life purpose? And I think people are in that, I have kids the same age as you, and I'm sort of in the same stage as some of these women. So yeah, I totally get it, but that's nice that to see those results. So was that like one of the biggest sort of surprises of the first week, or was there anything else that surprised you about like this first week that you launched Beyond the Nest?
I think the other surprise for me was I think a lot of us go through life and you kind of think that a lot of people, we all kind of think about things the same way or whatever. And it was mind-boggling to me that I think, oh my gosh, I totally overthink everything. I'm like the biggest overthinker. And I thought they're just like I embraced the fact that 75% of the attendees were very happy with their lives. They just wanted to come on the retreat for like fun and a little bit of change of pace. And the other 25% really wanted to recalibrate. And so I realized they were like my equals in that world. It's like I got just as much from them.
Yeah.
And because I should see where they were struggling. Like me, I lived in Arizona for 5 years, in like 2014 to 2019, and it's a very leisure culture. And so everyone I knew was retired, and like their biggest thing was they played golf 4 days a week.
And you're in
And
town and are busy.
and I'm like busy all the time. And they like they would, because it's so hot there, they would play golf at 6 to 9 in the morning, and then they'd go back and take a nap. And I don't know, the last time I had a nap, I was like, 26. And so I was like, you take a nap, like, oh, interesting. So it was a whole different ballgame to have people that were like, I'm nervous. I don't want to end up sitting in a chair watching Netflix all day, because if you don't have a purpose or a meaning in your life, I think it's very easy to sit in a chair and watch Netflix all day.
Agree, but it's nice to have the balance of the people that are chill and not overthinkers, and then the overthinkers, and the two come together and maybe they feed off each other too.
I
Well,
kind of wanted a blood transfusion. Like I was like, hey, can I have some of your blood? Because I really
right.
want to get that vibe, because I wish I could take it down a notch some days,
Maybe you
like,
should
hey,
practice taking a little nap, Mary. I bet you'd fall asleep easily and then you'd feel refreshed. Or you'd be one of those people who get up and like, I'll never nap again because I'm done for the rest of the day. I can't even
that's
function.
me. I can't
Yeah.
nap because then I'm like, I can't do the power nap thing.
What was there any were there things that were challenging that you didn't think would be? Is it just like the logistics of everything?
The logistics was not necessarily challenging because one of the people who works for my fertility companies is going to transition to work for this company over the next 6 or 8 months. And she's like logistics queen. She knew when everyone's flight is. We had all the airport transfers picked up. Everything was fine. To me, the biggest logistics issue was, this is going to sound awful, but we're in Mexico, and on Monday morning, everyone arrived on Sunday. Monday morning, this one woman walks we're at this huge villa on 2 acres. And it's stunning. I mean, it's just an amazing place. It has 9 bedrooms, 11 bathrooms. It has a yoga studio. It has a massage room. It has a beautiful pool with a fountain, outdoor kitchen. I mean, it's just amazing. And she comes into the kitchen where we had set up coffee and everything. And she goes, well, what kind of place is this? It is, I don't have any hot water. I was
Ooh,
like, oh no. And
yeah.
so I go back to her room and I turn it on and there's no hot water. And I'm like, okay, well, let me see what I can do. So Julia, who's the logistics manager, was still in Houston because her flights got canceled because of weather. So she still wasn't here. So she's doing logistics through text with us, right?
Right.
And I text her and I go, hey, do you know, can you talk to the house manager and find out what it is? She goes, it's Mexico, turn the levers the other direction.
Yeah, I was thinking that was just like a twist.
Yeah.
Ah,
So then we did that. And so this week we decided to have an orient. So that was like the big, oh my gosh, just the woman was so mad. You
right.
know, she was really mad. It's like when you go to a hotel and it's like, there's no hot water and you expect them to fix it like that. Well, we could fix it like that. Oh, then she felt sheepish. I go, hey, I did it too. But this week we kind of recalibrated and said, we need an orientation. So the
Right.
first night before dinner, before the cocktail hour, we ended up having a like a 10-minute orientation and made a big point of telling them this is how the faucets work.
Smart.
Yeah,
Yeah. Because it is the worst when you like can't figure something out in your room and you don't want to call anyone and all that stuff. So,
right.
well, it doesn't sound too, it sounds like it went as well as can be expected for your first week. And now you're in your second week. And have you had a favorite day since you've been there? Or a favorite thing that you guys did, like where you're just like, oh my God, this is just heaven.
Well, two things. The first favorite day was last week when we went on this church tour. And, you know, I've traveled to Europe and South America and Asia, whatever. So it's like, you've seen one church, you've seen them all after a while. Once you've seen Notre Dame, you're like, I'm done, you know.
Yeah.
But this was amazing because it was built in the 1730s.
Wow.
And this area was heavily populated by there's like a demarcation line south of this area in Mexico where it was like Aztecs, and then north of it was a different Indian deal. So when
Wow.
the Spanish came in and they were trying to get everybody to become Christians, this father got this vision and he came here and on this spot because there was some hot springs and he started building this church. Well, the church is your basic church, right? But then there's all these inner rooms, all these, and it was like I'd never seen anything like it. And not it wasn't like, oh my gosh, we're at St. Peter's and the soaring ceilings. It
Yeah.
wasn't that. It was like the Sistine Chapel of South America because the ceilings, every square
Oh,
millimeter was
love
painted. And it was a very interesting thing because we had two different visions of it. The vision, there was several Catholic women, and their vision was that this was to show the Indians that others suffered like they were, because the Indians were really basically they were suffering under the Spanish control. And then the other group was kind of like, it's scary. They're scaring the Indians into submission. So it
that.
was very interesting to have the two different concepts of what all the ceiling meant.
And what they were thinking when they were doing it.
Right. And it was like, well, no one's right. It was just kind of an interesting concept. And then this week, we're about 7 miles out of San Miguel de Allende in a little town called Totonilco. Okay, it took me
Wait, say
10
that.
days.
You're talking
Totonilco. It's
last Mary
spelled
talking. Totanil.
a Totonilco, A-T-O-T-O, so a Toto, and then Nilco, Nilco, a Totonilco.
Okay.
It's 7 miles north of San Miguel, so it's like a suburb of San Miguel, and it's this quaint little town. This is where this church is, and so last week they don't do like Holy Week during Holy Week because that's in the height of the ranchers season, so they do Holy Week this last week. So
Okay.
fireworks went off from 6 a.m. to midnight.
Oh,
There was
nice.
festivals in the street. I mean, it was like the perfect week. I mean, there's all these festivals,
Yeah.
and they have these huge paper mache. They're probably 10 feet tall, called uga gangas. I can't pronounce it. I can't spell it. But anyway, there's these, and they walk around and they're like big puppets. And so it was really cool for our attendees to get to see. They were truly deep in the culture of Central Mexico.
Oh my God. That sounds amazing. Totally amazing. I love what you're doing. I want to get into more. There's a trip to Greece, and then
Right.
there's some more things in 2001, and then there's like Thailand and some other stuff in 2000, not Thailand, excuse me, Vietnam and some other things in 2002. And I want to get to those, but I want to just like talk about you a little bit. And I just have questions. And even though I've known you for like almost 20 years, I have some questions. And like, I know I sent you a few questions over, but some
Right.
I'm just gonna throw some at you, but
Okay.
um, I like, can you tell us like what kind of, because for some people traveling's not easy. Like some people aren't good travelers, and you obviously have the travel bug, and I think you probably have it down. So can you tell everyone like, can you give everyone tips on like how to be a better traveler, and then like even packing stuff, like pack for me, like when I pack for a trip, I will literally write out each day and everything and then start crossing it off. Like I'm a maniac about it.
I'm not that like that. Okay, first let me say this. I
Terrified of
travel.
forgetting. I'm an overpacker too. So I want to
Oh
know
my God.
like
Yeah,
tell us your travel juju magic. Like how what should we be doing if to be less stressed about getting ready, because it's stressful, I think.
okay, so my goal in travel life is to be able to do one carry on and be able to do it for a month. But I've realized that I have a shoe issue and I have to have multiple pairs of shoes, and that will never work. Okay. So I have a good friend that came to visit me on her way back for a month-long trip in Europe. And she is my age. And I pick her up at the airport and she has this little itsy bitsy silver roll on bag. And I'm like, where's everything else? And she goes, oh, this is all I brought. I'm like, what? So she has that system where they have the pants and the shirt. Well, I can't do a system. I need to be a little more
Yeah.
colorful. Okay, but back to the travel. Most important thing that I have found is to have all your logistics completely organized. Okay. Now,
In a folder.
that being said, yes, in a folder, I have a folder. I carry it in my backpack. When I flew from Houston to Mexico almost 2 weeks ago, we decided that United Airlines, the fares had become out of control. I could have gone to Antarctica for the amount of United Airlines plane ticket from Houston to San Miguel.
Yeah.
So we tried a different airline, which will remain nameless. So I had to change planes in Monterey, and then there was like an hour and a half connection, completely doable. Everyone goes to DFW, and it's amazing. You can still make it, but this was Houston to Monterey, then Monterey down to Leon, which is the name of the airport. So in Houston, my flight's an hour and a half late. I'm cool. I'm still going to have time. The other flight's going to be late. We get on the airplane, we take off. It's like an hour and 12-minute flight to Monterey from Houston. It's not that far. Get off the plane, I'm like the third person through customs, because you have to go through customs and then claim your bag and then recheck it because you have to go through customs in Mexico.
For international.
So I'm like, okay, everything's cool. In the meantime, Julia, who is our logistics person, is texting me in the United States, telling me the other flight is running late. You're still good. You're still good. So I wait, no luggage, no luggage, no luggage, no luggage. 30 minutes go by. Julia's still telling me it's late. I go and try to ask in my bad Spanish, where's the bags? Because no more bags have come off. This woman takes me down the hall, out through everything. They get another baggage person. They come back. Then they get the Federale to talk to me. And she's like, so she looks at my passport, and she takes my passport and my boarding pass, and I don't have any luggage. And I'm in Mexico.
Oh
So
my
no
God.
passport, no luggage, no bag. I'm like, ah. And so she walks outside. You can see her.
Where's
She's
the
walking
tequila?
outside. I'm like, oh my God, it's gonna happen to me. And I'm like literally like in tears. I'm ready to like, who wants to ever leave Houston again? And so she comes back and she had the luggage. They had tagged it wrong in Houston to transfer, and you have to grab it and then transfer. So that got straightened out. But by this time, it was too late for me to catch the flight. The next flight was in 2 days. So I'm like in Monterey. So I ended up flying to Mexico City and then had a car service take me the 3.5 hour drive. So I started out in Houston, dropped off at the airport at 7 a.m. and I got to the villa at 10:30 that night. But through it all, I
Yeah.
managed to maintain my equilibrium, mainly because they had an American Express Centurion Lounge in Monterey. So that was, and I
That
could
was
sit
the key.
there and they kept giving me water and, ice cubes and food, and I was happy. So the moral of the story is you got to roll with the punches, but make sure, my number one thing now is make sure that your phone has international dialing.
Okay.
It's so cheap now. A lot of plans will let you do it for $10 a day. I have a plan that lets me I can call from anywhere, and it's just part of my plan. So international dialing, always number one. Don't count on getting hooked up to the local Wi-Fi, because this way I could communicate with somebody who could see what was happening on the ground. Because in Monterey, they were, oh, well, 2 days. Well, look, I'm going to take this Mexico City flight. And then I was able to get logistics. So that's number one. As far everything else is, if you're able to access the internet, then all your problems are solved. So that's why you should always have international dialing, because then you could do roaming, and it's so much cheaper than it was even 3 years ago. So that's number one. Number two, on packing. Packing is a hard one, but be that as it may, I've learned that here we're on cobblestones. Okay. So I've been here 4 times and I still brought flip flops and it's all cobblestone. What was I thinking? Right.
Yeah.
So I'm on the cobblestones last night and it had rained. I looked like I was 90 years old in my flip flops.
You just take your feet shoes off.
Well, no, they're huge cobblestones. So I had to be really safe. So I have other shoes, but I've kind of said, you know what? No one cares what your feet look like. Okay. Right. You're not going to look cute. You're on a trip or you're on a retreat, you're on a seminar. No one cares what you look like. Just wear the Tevas, or just wear the athletic shoes. Don't just be trying to be cute.
Be comfortable.
Right.
Be comfortable. Make sure you always know that there's maybe a plan B or C or D if you possibly. But I think going through COVID, we all are used to like plan B, C, D a little bit more than we were. However, we might get back to that place where we just think plan A is going to work. But
Charlotte, one thing that I did learn when I guess it was a trip, I was going to Eshrei, which is a big fertility meeting in Europe, and they lost my luggage. And it's like, okay, so basically I was without everything for 36 hours. And I had always carried a toothbrush with me, but reality, you can keep wearing the same clothes, but let's be frank, you don't want to keep wearing the same underwear. Okay. You just don't want to. So it's so funny because when I went through the customs, they opened up my backpack and they pulled out my baggie with my panties in it. But honestly, I'll carry a bag with panties in it and toothbrush and toothpaste. And when I used to wear contacts, I had all my contact gear, but now I've had cataract surgery, so I'm good. But that's it. If you have panties and a toothbrush, you're good to go.
Good to go. You can always buy stuff, right?
Yeah, you can always buy stuff.
You need that much if it's warm weather too. So, what were you like as a kid with travel growing up? Was that part of your life?
My family was big adventurers.
Travel, like, was that part of who you are as a kid?
I think when I was growing up, my parents, of course, were at the time, my dad was climbing a ladder, but we were ordinary middle class. And so when we were young, we would go on like afternoon road trips around the area. And then we would go like 2 or 3 day trips, but we did the whole Grand Canyon, we were those kind of trips. As we got older, we did like a cruise, or we would go to Acapulco, back when you could go to Acapulco. And then I spent 3 months in Australia when I was in nursing school. So I had a 3-month break, and I worked on boats out of the Great Barrier Reef in Rockville, Australia. And I can't cook, but I said I was a cook. And so those poor people, they still haven't survived.
You totally lied and told them you could cook.
Yeah. So I was traveling with a friend, and so we didn't really have enough money to go to Australia for 3 months. So we had to make money. So we went and we would sign on, and we would go on where they had a captain, and we would go sailing around the Great Barrier Reef for 3 or 4 days, come back, get on another boat, sail around the Great Barrier Reef for 3 or 4 days. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I love that. So, but do you think that was when you were like, I love this, like, let's just go out and figure out like how to make this work?
No, my first true adventure outside of my family was I went to Nicaragua. And I did some volunteer work in Nicaragua with vaccinations and things like that. And so I lived in the mayor's house in this little town on the banks of the Lake Managua, which is the largest lake in North or South America. It's humongous. It's like a sea, and it has a freshwater shark that lives in the lake. So it's like no swimming in the lake. And so I'm at the mayor's house because we're going to be there for a couple of months. And I slept on an army cot. And there was basically a hole with a toilet seat on top of it for the bathroom. And then you had to make your own shower. Okay. And this was the nicest house in this town. It was a hard scrabble house. place. I loved it. I mean, we went everywhere. We rode horseback to vaccinate people. I mean, it was really cool. I was like, I didn't care if I was dirty. I didn't care what my hair looked like. It was great. And that lit the bug. Then I kind of got into like, I really like to travel 5 stars. So now I'm like a 5-star traveler, but I could do the other thing
do
too.
both, and they're
I
both
could do both. Right.
fun. That's cool. All right, one more personal question about, so like, I don't think people know, some people know, people who know you know that you do marathons. And
Right.
you're like a long distance athlete, right? Like, would you say,
Well, I mean, I have been running since I was in high school,
yeah,
but I was a short distance runner. And then in my 30s, I joined a running group just because I
mhm,
wanted to do a 5K. And then I did more 5Ks, and then I did a half marathon, and then I did marathons. And so during COVID, I had to step back, but now I'm trying to get back into shape. I want to run the Houston Marathon in January. So
and so you've
I'm
done that.
slow. I'm slow.
I know, but still, that's a lot. And then like earlier this year, I know you did some kind of fast that really put your body a challenge. I guess what I'm getting at is like, you like to put yourself into uncomfortable situations and challenge your body to do things that are hard, right? Or is
I
that
do.
not?
Well, no, I think that the running thing is because it's the only place I've ever been able to have it's where I go think. So if I tell my employees, hey, I'm going to go for a run, they're like, please go. We need you to go on out there and go run, because that's where I do thinking. I may listen to music or a podcast, but I have no idea what it said at the end, because I usually will take a problem in my head and I will go out and I will run for whatever, 4 miles, 5 miles, 6 miles. And then when I come back, I usually solve the problem.
Yeah.
And it's weird, it's just how it works. And that's why I keep doing it. I'm really kind of sad because my friends have started to drop out of running. Oh, my knees hurt, this hurts, that hurts. And so I'm kind of a lone ranger out there now, and I'm trying to find new running friends.
You just put it out there, you'll find new running friends.
Right.
But and do you get to a point sometimes in these longer races where you're like, you just have to figure out where the grit is and that you're super
Oh,
challenged, like, and how you do that? Like,
well, the worst one ever was in Dallas. It was a half marathon, and I was with 3 other friends of mine, and we knew it was going to rain, but it was in December. But Dallas in December is not as awful as like Connecticut in December. So
right.
we said, well, we need to get some ponchos because we had driven up from Houston. So we went into a Walgreens, and they didn't have any more of those ponchos things for adults, but they had kids, and they had them in like fruit flavored colors. So we put them on and we licked the Fruit Loops. So we had this great, it's one of my favorite pictures was of all of us in these ponchos that only come up like to our waist because they're kid ponchos. And we look like little nuns peeking out because the face hole was like this big. But so we start the race the
So,
next day, and it's okay. And we get about 5 miles out, and it's a loop. Okay. We get 5 or 6 miles out, and it starts pouring and the temperature starts dropping, and then it's sleeting.
oh my God.
And my shoes are wet. I have blisters everywhere. I can't get warm.
Right.
Everything is cold. We finally make it back. And this marathon, Dallas marathon and half marathon, I'm talking to you, they didn't give us anything other than these little tiny like mylar sheets to put around us. There was no food. There was no nothing at the end. And
Yeah.
I remember the last 2 miles, I was like, I'm never doing this again. This is ridiculous. I'm not doing it again. So
How'd you get through it? Where did you get that grit? Do you know? Like, what were you just like, I can't not, I have to do this.
because I will say this, and it's a character positive and it's a character negative. I never quit anything. I can't quit anything. And my poor children have now counseled me
So,
that they really hated that part of my personality as they were growing up, because I never let them quit anything. If
yeah,
they started something, they had to finish something, and they hated it. I am getting better and learning that you can let it go, that you don't have to always finish it.
yeah.
But maybe that's why I have problem with food, because I have to finish my plate.
That's a good point. Yeah. So that's something you're working on. You have to just, as I said before, I think a lot of life is practicing what we're uncomfortable with, you know,
And
practice,
quitting,
practice and
you
quit it.
know,
And
yep.
sometimes it's time to walk away. from things like, you know, like if it's a toxic relationship, whether it's a friend or a guy or whatever it is, you know,
Yep.
walk away. Well, thank you for sharing some of your personal side. I'd love to hear more. You have a trip coming up in Greece, in Paros, Greece,
Paros, Greece.
I want you to know that I put this special picture of Santorini up
I
for
know.
our conversation today because I'm obsessed with it, even though I've never been there. Just
I've been twice. It's
okay.
amazing. The first time I went to Santorini, I was on a cruise with my mom, and I was awestruck because they have like a funicular that takes you up from the where the boats are, or you can take the mule ride. Okay. The second time I went, I stayed in Oi, which is where you usually see the beautiful pictures of the white churches with the blue domes and everything. I stayed there at this
Mhm.
amazing hotel called the Catakeys, where our room hung out over the caldera. I mean, it was just like the most wonderful romantic place ever. Now, where we're going is called Paros, and it is not Santorini, it's not Mykonos, which is the party island, but it is like the third one after that because it's a little bit quieter. So they
Mhm.
don't have all night bars and restaurants, but it has an unbelievable number of sandy beaches, and they're all different. Some have big granite formations. There's a marble quarry there that's been used for centuries, where they get this pure white marble that a lot of famous statues are made of. And you can go sailing to a couple other islands. You can actually sail to Mykonos from Paros. So we're going to do a day trip where we sail to Mykonos, go to and then have fun in Mykonos, and then sail back for the night. So
That's amazing. So you're doing 1 to 2 weeks in Greece, and is there a theme for that week that you guys, for the people that want to go to figure out their life a little bit more? Sure.
well, there's we 1 week is called Flying the Coop, and it's kind of like people that are ready to change their lives. Maybe they're empty nester, maybe they're trying to change jobs, change careers. COVID has kind of changed everyone's thinking around. The other week is kind of a companion week, and it's about manifesting your goals and desires. So it's kind of a workshop to help you put it together. I always Vanessa, my partner,
Mhm.
I call her the woo woo one, and I'm the unwoo woo one.
Right.
But I've gotten a little more woo woo in the last 2 weeks. Okay. Yeah. A
Right.
little more woo woo. It's
Yeah.
good for me. Yeah. So that one is more about how to build on your manifestation. And it's so funny because we were talking about this with the ladies from last week who were a little bit older than, Vanessa, who's 28. And they go, oh, yeah, in my day, we just called it goals.
Yeah.
Manifestation goals. I'm like, okay, well, whatever
Right.
makes you happy,
Your
manifestation or goals.
in business, like what's your objective?
Exactly. Let me give you a PowerPoint presentation on your objectives.
Right. What's
Yeah.
your POA? What's your plan of action?
What's your ROI?
Right. What's your ROI? What's your God? Um,
Oh, be
so
quiet. Don't say it anymore.
that's in mid to late September, and then tell us what other retreats are down the pipe.
Okay, so we're trying to stay abreast of COVID,
Yeah,
and we are like, for instance,
touch on like what you guys are doing if you want to, like at some
yeah.
point in this part.
Well, with COVID, what we're doing is like all of our guests have this trip. Everyone's vaccinated. I personally would prefer that everyone be vaccinated. I highly prefer that everyone be vaccinated because I believe in the science, and being in the science world, I believe it. But we are providing rapid COVID tests. All of the people who come in contact with our group have to have a rapid COVID test, even if they have a COVID vaccination card. So, like our housekeepers. The first 2 days they wore masks, and they got rapid COVID tests, and now they don't because they've been tested several times. And then leaving, we provide a COVID test before you leave. Mexico, the United States requires you to have a COVID test when you come from Mexico. So we have someone coming tomorrow to test everybody before they get on their flights on Saturday.
Okay,
Okay.
good.
So that's one thing.
That sounds easy.
Greece is the good news is Greece is taking a lot of their vaccines and taking them to the island people because they know that's where their bread and butter is, and they need to get that island tourism back going. It's increased 40% month over month.
Yep.
I'm on a Greek tour operator email list every day, so I'm getting all the poop on Greece. They are really clamping down on their outbreaks, and they're doing a lot of tracing. So like they had an outbreak in Mykonos last week that they traced to some people from another country, and that it didn't actually infect anyone on the island. So they're doing their due diligence in Greece because this is their bread and butter is tourism.
Yeah. And then Greece is, I've never been there, but obviously I bought this print, so I want to go there. And what is in store for 2022? Do you want to, do you want to share any more about what
Yes.
future
So-
plans for beyond this?
Right. So we have Greece in September. We had planned on Malta. What happened is we got a little nervous and needed to pull back because some of these countries are not as open to American or European tourists as others. So we decided to pivot. We're probably going to do some what we call short-term retreats in October and November, 3 or 4 days, and we're going to call them Taste of the Nest. And they're going to be in the United States so that people could get to them quickly, 3 or 4 days. More information is coming on that. Starting next year, our first trip is scheduled for January in Vietnam. Right now, we may have to pivot and put it in February because of our tour operator there that is helping us with the villa has basically said they have not opened up yet to American tourists. And most of our clients are American tourists. And so we don't want to go book people. They do feel that by mid-February, so we may transition that to mid-February. We also are looking at Bali and Thailand. One of the things I've learned about having a travel business is pivot is the most important word. You have to be able to pivot. So when we see things that may not work, we have to move away from those and move into something that will work. So our people that have paid their deposit for trips in 2022, they can roll that deposit onto any other trip. So it's like you never lose your money. You have a deposit, and we have a woman that was supposed to come on this trip that is now has pivoted to Greece.
That has what?
She's pivoted to Greece. She couldn't
okay.
come. She couldn't come on San Miguel. She
Okay.
was like our second or third person that paid her money, but she couldn't come, and so now she's coming to Greece instead.
Oh, that's nice. And
Yeah.
you know what? We just don't know with COVID we don't know. And like, in Los Angeles now we have I feel like we're going to have another mask mandate in the country, and we don't know. But as we're plan B, C, D, and pivot, we're doing all of it, and it'll all work out, I'm thinking. So I know your demographic's mostly women, but you have some men too now, right?
Yes. This week we have 3 men out of the 9 travelers. We have 3 men, and one's a digital nomad that can work from anywhere, is in a high-tech company. One owns a marketing company, can work from anywhere. And the other one is a videographer that Vanessa met on another trip. And he actually has been, he does photography, videography. He's worked for, ABC Sports, that kind of stuff. And he's now a digital nomad, has a home base in Washington. And it's been amazing because he's now the one he's making videos for us. So probably next week, we're going to have all these cool videos on our website and our Instagram, our Facebook. And he's amazing. He's done some drone stuff. And I thought, oh my gosh. And then the drone stuff's going to be really fun. So now there's the drone up there. The plane. Okay. When the first guest came, and the villa has this enormous iron door that opens into this outdoor kind of atrium area, which is beautiful. And then there's like 10 steps that you walk up to the villa, right? So Vanessa the first guests are coming the first Sunday, and she's standing there. She has a tray with rolled up cold towels and bottles of water. And so as the door opens, I'm like, the plane, because it made me think of, okay, so only people of a certain age.
They all had to know the reference based on their age.
She was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, okay, it's okay. Don't worry.
That was literally like the creepiest show. Like if you think about it, it was right after Dallas, and then it was Fantasy Island, I think, on Friday night. I don't know why I remember that or something, but Fantasy Island, right? And there was always like creepy things happening on the island.
Right, I know. And somehow I lost your picture, but
You
I'm
did?
here. Yeah, I don't know what happened, but I'm here. Okay.
That's weird.
That's
Okay.
all right. I'm here.
I see you. Okay. So how do we get some more of Mary? Where do we find you in Beyond the Nest? Tell the viewers that are on watching this podcast how they would find you
Okay,
or
well,
and
they could.
find information about your amazing trips coming up.
Well, you can find us at beyondthenest.org, O-R-G. There is another Beyond the Nest that is a child care facility in Rochester, New York. This is not the one you want to go to, okay? They're beyondthenest.com. We are beyondthenest.org. But I will say that if you type in Beyond the Nest, we now are higher in the Google rankings, so we get there first. So we're Beyond the Nest. .org. You can find us on Facebook, Beyond the Nest, and on Instagram, Pinterest, all under Beyond the Nest. So, and on the website is all the information. You can just click on the little icon for like Greece. Up pops this whole information thing with pictures of the villa, pictures of the beaches, pictures of the little restaurant. We have a 14 bedroom compound with three houses. They're 4, 4, and 5. There's a big swimming pool, outdoor kitchen. We're going to have some chef cooked lunches and some dinners. And every morning we'll have your basic European continental breakfast and a bunch of cool activities. The sailing trip, trips to the beaches. We're going to have cars available where we'll have drivers that will take you to wherever you want to go. So it's going to be a great fun time. Right now, you can come for it's $59.95 for two, sharing a room. There's most of these rooms also have like a seating area, a big bathroom, or it's $39.95 for a solo, and that's a king bed, a little tiny sitting room, and a bathroom.
Very nice. All the pictures
Yeah,
look
yeah.
unbelievable. I love it. And so I want to know if there's anything that you would like to share before we jump off. Is there anything else that people should know, or have we covered most of it?
I would say don't be afraid to travel. I mean, I'm a very science oriented person and really took COVID very seriously. But I also realized that one has to live your life and that as long as you take adequate precautions, like I still wear a mask when I go to the grocery store in
I
Houston.
do.
Everyone in Mexico still wears a mask. It's
Mhm.
very, even though San Miguel is pretty vaccinated, everyone still wears a mask. I think that we've made all the precautions for our trip. Going to Greece, it's outside, it's an
Yeah.
outside thing. We're going to be in our own little bubble. And the people that we're going to interact with, tour operators, sailors, and stuff, they're all going to be vaccinated. So I think that, and they're now finding that there's not really transmission on airplanes because everyone has a mask on. So, I think that you're good to go. Don't be afraid to jump in the water. This is a great opportunity because it won't be as crowded and the weather is spectacular in Greece and the European
Always.
tour. Yeah, well, it's always good. The islands get colder in October through March and April, but the Europeans will all have gone back. So it's really like going to be almost our own island.
Yeah. And they have you who's got all these degrees in various things, but specifically in nursing. So like if anything, you're going to be there to help if something, not that they wouldn't have access to medical help, but it's nice to have an opinion right there in the group.
Well, we also have a whole list of information. We want people should always have travel insurance, and we highly recommend what we call medical trip insurance. I use Geo Blue, GEOBLUE. If you have health insurance, you have to have American health insurance of any kind to get it, but it's $245 a year, and it includes $1 million worth of coverage, including flying you back to the States with a companion.
Wow.
So I buy it every year in August for the whole next year, and it covers me. I've never had to use it. And so we highly recommend that and trip insurance. So in case of cancellation, like if the country's closed down, the airlines so it's worth the, $79 to buy the trip insurance. So that's my final advice on it.
That's great. That 245 is amazing advice. I
Yeah.
love it. And of course, trip insurance is important too, but Thank you so much. I think that's a wrap. What do you think?
Thank you. I enjoyed it. It was great fun. And as always, it's so fun to see you.
So fun to see you. All right.